afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us in yet another sector outlook hosted by John Keells Stockbrokers. Joining us today are three gentlemen in the green energy and electric vehicle space. Mr. Charitha Subasinghe, who is president of the retail sector for John Keells Holdings. He's been with the John Keells Group since 2003, and he was the sector financial controller of the supermarket business before he was appointed as CEO in 2005. Previously, he was employed at Aitken Spence Hotel Management as the sector financial controller before he came over to John Keells. Mr. Yadav is the general partner of Lion Ventures with 20 plus years of global investment banking and asset management experience. He has experience working in the UAE, in the UK, Malaysia, and Singapore, with his longest stint at Reliance Capital, where he spent almost a decade. He's now swapped spreadsheets for promoting green energy here in Sri Lanka. And today he wears two hats. He's the general partner at Lion Ventures, a Sri Lanka-focused venture fund. And he is co-founder and CEO of Sling Mobility, which is Sri Lanka's first 360-degree battery swapping and green logistics platform in the process of building a smart EV ecosystem. Mr. Romani Silva is a deputy chairman and managing director of Alliance Finance. He's a fellow of the Institute of Credit Management and counts over 30 years' experience in the finance industry. He was appointed to the board of Alliance Finance PLC in 1990 and currently is deputy chairman and managing director. Under his leadership, AFC became the first financial institution in South Asia to be certified at level 4 under the pioneering Global Sustainability Standard SSCI for finance institutions, which was developed by the European Organization for Sustainable Development, which is an EU initiative. He's an active promoter of development-oriented sustainable banking and finance in Sri Lanka, and he serves on SSCI Council, which is a global council initiated by the European Organization for Sustainable Development. Thanks a lot, gentlemen, for joining us. Just to start with you, Mr. Subasinghe, in what is a brand new venture for the retail sector for JKH. We recently started shipping BYD vehicles for the market. How have you seen the take-up for BYD? What do you see in terms of expected sales for this year? I think expectations are that Sri Lanka will do unusual sales after having pent-up demand for about 5 or 6 years. And how do you see sales going forward after this unusual year as well?
Yeah, I mean, thank you very much for having me. I think after 4 or 5 years of closure totally, this is the first year of imports that has happened. So as you quite rightly said, there's a pent-up demand. If you looked at the last 10 years of vehicle imports to the country, it had the absolute fluctuations, the peaks and troughs simply coming from the different duty policy changes that have happened in the country. So whenever the duty went down, a lot of people bought vehicles. When the duty went up, they curtailed. So there have been the pluses and minuses. The peaks have been in the passenger vehicles, have been about 100,000 vehicles have been the peaks, while on the trucks have been about 30 to 40. So we are assuming that this year, with the pent-up demand, there should be a reasonable number of vehicles that would come into the country. And if you again go by the yardstick or the aspiration of the government in terms of revenue, what they said is that they are thinking of the FX requirement will be about $1 billion with the intention of making 300 billion in terms of revenue, or 200 billion, I think, was in terms of revenue. And when we worked a back of the envelope calculation based on our mix, that is roughly about 40,000 vehicles that could be bought for the $1 billion of FX. And if you do get the 40,000 vehicles, you could comfortably go surpass the revenue target the government has set. So overall, the take-up for EV vehicles are a relatively new product in the country. Before the country opened this time, the total population of passenger vehicles were EV vehicles were only about 5,000. And of course, it didn't really pick up simply because I guess there wasn't a uh, real marketing work that was done around EV. And also the vehicles that did come at that time were of a previous generation, where the technology was also relatively of a lower level. But what has happened over the last 5 to 6 years in this EV vehicle space is the technology has significantly increased. And today, any vehicle, not only BYD, but on a relatively any EV vehicle can do with a single charge about 400 kilometers. So that takes away that range anxiety one would have, and that would allow that person uh, to live the life that he was wanting in terms of the traveling he would want to do, and especially in a country like Sri Lanka, where it is a small island which is there 400 kilometers, takes away that range anxiety. Uh, so that, and also in terms of the saving for operating cost also significantly lower, where today with the EV vehicle, even with the mix of hydro power as well as the thermal power, still your energy cost will be about 88% cheaper than the petrol or diesel vehicle. So all that have been considered by most of the consumers and what we also did even before the country opened was that we did a huge educating process of and firstly understanding what the concerns of the consumers, potential customers were, and handling them, starting with educating about the product, educating the different stakeholders about the products. That included the insurance companies as well as the leasing companies about the product, then as well as taking away those anxieties, including fast charging options to all that. So today we are at a relatively decent level. Now, yesterday, the Honorable President had mentioned the total LCs open for the country was about $350 million, and out of which, when we worked out back of the envelope, the number of the value of the LCs that we have opened is relatively about 20%. So it shows that in comparison to the total imports of vehicles, we have got about a 20% market share as at today. So going is good.
Thank you, Mr. Subasinghe. And if you look at, I mean, earlier, if you are looking at, say, the per ticket average per ticket size for a vehicle, which we estimate being something like 10 million rupees or so, where has the skew been? Has it been towards the lower end of the offerings that we have, or has it been towards the higher end of the offerings?
Well, Naveen, I think it's a little too early for us to take an assumption how it will land, simply because when we started taking bookings, it was at a time where the country has also hadn't opened officially. So most of the bookings were at a higher level at that time. But since the opening of the country, we see the lower and the middle class, middle level, middle tiered vehicles, which are at about a 10 million to 15 million, the picking up of that, the bookings of that vehicles have significantly increased as well. So you see, I think the advantage in the BYD range of vehicle is that it caters to different tiers, right, from the top to the middle and the lower. So it has quite a spectrum of models that covers almost all the market requirements.
Right. And do you see the range increasing over the course of the current year, or do you think there's still time to kind of see what traction is at the moment?
When you say range in terms of more models,
The product range.
it is increasing. So even over the next few months, we will see we have in our pipeline about another 5 to 6 models coming in. And that will cover further more premium range as well as even a much more lower entry-level product range as well.
Right. And if you could just map out like your standard customer journey for purchasing BYD, how does it work? Like, what is the expected delivery process, the timeline from the customer's order to like vehicle handover at the moment?
Yeah, so I think the advantage with the Chinese companies is that the I mean they are very flexible and they have the capacity of delivery. So the conversation is today is how quickly can you open LC and we'll just put it in the ship and send it across type of situation. So today we are taking bookings today with the promise of delivering in June. So and of course in these vehicle imports after post the opening of the country this time, there is also certain restrictions that within 90 days you have to register the vehicle, and that stops sort of stocking up as well. But overall, within about 45 to 60 days, we can deliver the vehicle into the hands of the potential customer.
Right. And what are the expectations regarding after-sales service and sort of repair and so on? That would be like a fully fledged service with like guarantees given after purchase?
Yes, so there is the 8-year or 160,000 kilometer warranty, which is given by the manufacturer. But in addition to that, we have set up a fully fledged service center. The second service center is also going to be opened by about August with the intention of providing the necessary service for the customer. So one thing is that when John Keells signed up with BYD, I mean, John Keells, which has been in the industry or not, although we have not been in the vehicle industry, but we do have a 150-year heritage, and we have built a certain a brand governance for the group, and under no circumstances do we want to compromise on this aspect of after sales as well. So we have geared up ourselves in terms of technology, the trained personnel, as well as the spare parts that are there, to ensure that we'll be able to provide the service levels expected from the customer.
Right. The sensitivity around range anxiety must be something that you all must be like trying to keep a close track of, right? As from what you can tell, I mean, you were talking about education efforts being made before we open the showroom, but I mean, even now, in terms of a marketing push and kind of overcoming that particular concern, how do you see that progressing?
Yes.
Do you see that concern having eased off a lot, or do you think there's a lot more work to be done?
I think I'm sure the other gentleman also will talk about it. Is that one thing is the infrastructure that needs to happen around the charging network also comes into play. So we have, knowing that as a concern that came up during our initial market understanding, we started rolling out fast chargers in our supermarket chain. And fast chargers means that within about 45 minutes, you can charge a vehicle from 0 to 80%. And that was a new technology that was incorporated. And the advantage of for us is the real estate available with our supermarket chain, which has enabled us to start rolling out those fast chargers. So that and in addition to that, with each vehicle, we also provide a charger which within about 2 to 3 hours that can fully charge a vehicle as well. So that is given free of charge with the vehicle that is bought. So those are the methods that we are implemented to ensure that anxiety is also taken off, where they can comfortably even go up to Jaffna. And you know that there is also a charging network available there. They can be able to recharge and come back. So the infrastructure of charging is also part of our strategy, which we rolled out even before the country opened for imports. So that was a way of managing that anxiety.
Okay, what is the current network in terms of the charging network around the Keells
We
superstores,
have
and
at the
what are the
moment,
plans to take it forward?
yeah. So we have at the moment 15 locations in and around Colombo as well as outside Colombo with the charges, but our intention is to scale it up to about 30 to 40 within our supermarket chain. But in addition to that, there are also, if you take the code gen has a decent charging network available as well. So all that together either we have the infrastructure in place for a vehicle to travel around the country as well as get it charged when they want it. So it is getting developed. So now, I mean, with only 5,000 vehicles that were there previously, there wasn't really a real financial or a business case to expand the vehicle, the charging network. But I truly believe that within the next 12 months, this 5,000 will definitely grow to a significant number that will make a business case for a further charging network as well. So I believe that over the next 12 to 18 months, further charging networks would come in that will also take away that anxiety a customer would have.
And in terms of the grid functionality, that are you all using existing store transformers, or does it require grid upgrades? How has the infrastructure been from that point of view?
I think that is going to be the bottleneck going forward. The transformer, the grid ability to take these fast chargers. That would possibly be one of the issues that the country would have in expanding. But the advantage in our supermarket chain is that we have excess capacity in the transformers that we have installed in our supermarkets. So that has enabled that excess capacity is being used to fix in these charges. So that's the advantage we have. And at the moment we have 160 plus outlets and hoping to grow on an annual basis. So each of these locations would be able to cater to additional charging points.
And in terms of now, like when you talk about a customer coming in to charge their car, so they will come in, charge their car, and then the expectation, I would guess, is that they would also have to make a purchase at the store, or how do you all kind of negotiate that particular?
No, not really. So it is like they go and charge it, and it's a seamless operation where it's on an app, and the app has the credit card as well. So you charge it, and then the payment is taken off the credit card. So it is and that's all that they need to do. There's no connection having to shop or whatever. But they do their thing and go off. But of course, what would also happen is that they will possibly plan their shopping as well as charging together, where they will, while the vehicle is getting charged, you'll possibly do your shopping as well. So that would be a sort of a indirect benefit the supermarket will have. But as far as the charging aspect is concerned, it's an independent operation.
Right. Just to bring Mr. Yadav also into this conversation, Mr. Yadav, if you could give us a brief description of how you see the current state of play of the EV and green energy sector in Sri Lanka from when you started, and certainly after post-crisis, when I would imagine a lot of the necessary capex kind of dried up, and what your expectations are in terms of where policy is going.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just take a step back over here and actually give the audience here a global perspective of what is happening in the world right now and why is it relevant for Sri Lanka and why we should invest more in the EV infrastructure and EV the business modules out in Sri Lanka. So look. I think the title of this the webinar is "Future of Electric Cars in Sri Lanka." but I will take it back to future of mobility. So in my personal opinion, I feel future of mobility is going to be shared, connected, and electric. So I don't want to be spending too much time on shared and connected, but this entire electric bit of this entire future is dependent predominantly on how the policy changes are happening in the world. I'll take few examples, like for example, in California by 2035, all kinds of new vehicles registered will have to be electric. Coming sooner and closer to where Sri Lanka is, India has a 30% target of converting all the vehicles to electric by 2030 to meet the 2070 net zero agenda. But actually, this 30% is pretty interesting if you dive into the numbers. So 30% will be passenger cars. 70% will be commercial vehicles, 80% will be two and three wheelers around 40% will be buses. So I think given what is happening in the world and given what will happen in India, I think with this vast ecosystem development, I think Sri Lanka will not be left behind, and I believe the next 7 to 10 years time will be very interesting in terms of what may happen in Sri Lanka as far as the EVs and EV infrastructure is concerned. So Sling at this point in time is an energy as a service company for energy infrastructure with mobility and energy storage as two main verticals. So getting back to this, I think we spend around 7 to 8 minutes time on range anxiety. I think it's a true thing. I think whether you have fast chargers or not, or whether your density of chargers is great, but I think the range anxiety will be alleviated over a period of time. How can that happen? A company like BYD or a company which is hosting BYD in Sri Lanka does not have full responsibility to potentially put the fast charging network or a charger network. So broader companies need to come into play to see how this entire load of range anxiety reduction is removed out in the market. If I were to look at those numbers, as Mr. Subasinghe mentioned, that maybe 40,000 vehicles may be imported this year, and if BYD has 20% LC opening, so let me take that number as a benchmark. So we are looking at close to around 8,000 new EVs out in the market, which would be BYD alone, but there might be more. If 8,000 additional EVs come into market, add on to the 5,000 existing, then we need a massive infrastructure of chargers, public chargers available out in the country. So that's a big opportunity for any provider to look at. So that is where we step into play. So in the mobility segment, we have two verticals. One is energy as a service for two and three wheelers, wherein we have battery swapping and subscription model. And for the larger vehicles, we have chargers as a service model, wherein we don't sell the charger, but we deploy and operate the chargers ourselves. So our prototypes of these chargers are built, but what we will like to focus quite a bit on is destination AC chargers, wherein our 80% deployment of those chargers would be destination AC chargers, where people anyway spend more than 3 to 4 hours around it, school, hospitals. It could be in a night stay in a hotel or whatever that may be, and 20% would be fast chargers. So I think we have tightened a belt to potentially match up to the demand, which pent up demand, as we said, which the country would see to match up the charger infrastructure. With respect to the policies, I can't comment on that right now, but I think I've been part of the discussion board of at PUSCL and multiple other agencies, but seems like the IPPs and energy provider LECO and CEB, their broader agenda is currently different, which is providing grid stability to the grid rather than looking at what may happen to EV as a sector. But let me give you a scary scenario that if 40,000, 8,000 new EVs are going to come in, and if assuming in next 10 years time this entire EV movement picks up, and 3.2 million two-wheel, say 50% of 3.2 million two-wheelers, and say around 50% of 1.2 million three-wheelers convert to electric, then I think we are looking at an extremely bleak future in terms of where the energy infrastructure is created to keep up the demand. So I think it's too early for me to comment what those forward-looking policies might be for the government, but I believe the government is thinking in the right direction. evolution. One thing which I could say that there's a proposal which has been discussed wherein EV three-wheeler conversion could become part of the national policy as a part of Sri Lanka signing into climate accord, Paris Climate Accord. That's a very good news. So I think it is too early for me to comment right now in terms of what may happen in the policy. But one thing which I would like to see is that we need to look at how we can reduce the cost at the customer's pocket. So we need to look at what should happen to the VAT. We need to look at what should happen to certain duties so that the adoption of EVs is not as expensive as ICE vehicle right now.
Mr. Romani de Silva, in terms of from the perspective of a financing company, I know financing companies being very closely tied into vehicle lending as well. How do you see this new influx of EVs coming into the market, and how do you see it affecting the future of the finance sector as a whole as well?
Yeah, I think it's interesting times. Firstly, thank you for having me here. It's great to be at a forum like this, talking about something new and good for the country. So I think it's very timely. And we, as a financier, we see this in a very positive light. And it's great to see BYD, Evolution Auto, many companies coming up with very, very good product offerings at excellent prices. I think BYD has done tremendously well with their market acceptance, and it's a great car. We've seen it on the roads, looks brilliant and performs extremely well. We've also seen the Mahindra range coming in, the three-wheelers with Evolution Auto, three different models. And all of these vehicles have got over a lot of the range issues that were there in the early days. So overall, I think we're looking at a very positive picture going forward. It's just that to really realize the true potential of EV and green mobility in Sri Lanka, we really need to have very strong policy alignment and policy consistency. So I think that's one area where people are a little nervous because you have even solar, the policy on solar rates, tariffs being changed from time to time. Such things create nervousness in players because you don't want to be. I mean, we ourselves raised a green bond, the first for the NBFI sector, of ₹1 billion for solar. But then since then, the rates that we used at the time we structured the bond, the tariff rates are now seemingly not going to be the same. So such issues of lack of policy consistency and stability, I think, need to be addressed at the highest levels. And I think the chambers and the large corporates in the country should get together and have a very good dialogue with the government and to have very clear policy alignment and a very clear vision for electric mobility for Sri Lanka. So I think once that is very well established and the direction is clear and one can then plan for about 5 years at least and bring in these vehicles, because if you don't have that stability, some of the newer models that I think Mr. Yadav spoke about and Mr. Subasinghe mentioned, the trading, operating lease models where you actually divorce the battery ownership in some cases and you make it far more economical for the end user. All of those models will not work unless there is policy consistency with the government. So I think that's one area that is kind of lagging behind. To some extent, I think the business world and the corporate world has moved forward on their own. I think it's time to regroup and engage with the government and have a very clear plan as to where electric mobility could be taken and how it could benefit Sri Lankan citizens. And Sri Lanka on the whole, in terms of greening the country, I think sustainable development goals are not far off the mark. If you look at the UN SDG, the 17 UN SDGs, we are fairly on track, and I think there's a lot more that needs to be done. And mobility, electric transportation is one of the biggest areas and one of the biggest pollutants in the country. So we see the risks emanating from the policy side if you don't have consistency, and alignment, a strong alignment. But having said that, it's a no-brainer that the country has to, move forward in this direction. Global commitments are going in that direction. And with the exception of some manufacturers who are slowing down their investment into electric mobility, we see that in some German manufacturers, they are looking at further improving ICE. But I think that's something that you need to keep an eye on. But by and large, it's great, I think, to see electric mobility becoming a mainstay in some developed countries, and Sri Lanka following suit. So from a financing perspective, I think one of the greatest impediments is the cost of finance. Sustainable finance is something that should be made available at a lower interest rate than regular IC financing for electric mobility financing. So I think this is something where the banking sector and the NBFI sector players such as ourselves, we need to work together to really support the ecosystems that Mr. Yadav and Mr. Subasinghe and BYD, they are building, to really have a financing solution that makes it very affordable. And in that sense, also there is government, I think, involvement needed to source and locate lower costs of, low cost financing and credit lines, which are internationally available for greening one's economy. So I think we have GCF funding, which is, there are two banks, I believe, that are accredited. And but the problem with most of these lines are that they're very bureaucratic and take a very long time to disburse. So I think if you really want to see this taking off, especially in the commercial sector, such as, three-wheelers and vans and the little trucks and all of that, you would need to see very attractive financing to make the switch or to accelerate the switch. So I think there's great potential, and we as a financier are very happy, and we are planning to play a major role in EV financing in Sri Lanka. And we have a 90 branch network, and we're looking at many different models, including operating leases, trading in for electric. And that's part of our green mandate, because our purpose of existence at AFC is to make the world a better place through sustainable finance. And that's truly our biggest differentiator.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Disila. Just to dig a bit deeper into what you just said, in terms of concessional financing, you were saying that some of the requirements are bureaucratic and it's not easy. Can you just give us a little bit more background on what the level of concession is, what the problems are in terms of getting financing? Because there has been talk about concessional financing being offered to many different sectors and many different things like SMEs and so on over the years. And anecdotally, what seems to me is that you see a lot of talk about concessional financing given, especially for green energy driven initiatives like what we are talking about today. But you're saying that it's not as easy as it sounds, is it?
Absolutely. So, I mean, we have been raising funding overseas for almost a decade now, and we work with all the top tier DFIs, both in Europe and in the US. But what we see is when it comes to impact financing from DFIs, we still see that when you look at the interest rate, the hedging mechanisms that are available, and you take the swap costs locally, and you add all of these up, you pretty much end up at the same level in terms of cost of the local banks. So I think what's happening here is we need to engage other agencies that can take a part of those costs when you're looking at green financing. And you also need to have a critical mass. And I think if the banking sector and the NBFI sector work together on sustainable financing, then you can mobilize larger lines of credit, which are north of $100 million, where you could really see then a difference in the rates. And those rates could be passed on to the consumer, making the transition more affordable. So I think one of the problems we have is economies of scale, and the lack of scale. When we raise 15 or $20 million, we're not able to mobilize those funds at very low rates. They are market rates, and when you bring in the depreciation of the rupee, which is a risk, and the risk premiums for swaps, you're looking at the cost going up. But having said that, if the banking sector does work together with the NBFI sector and the government and the policymakers, I believe there are plenty of impact funds out there that would come into Sri Lanka with larger ticket mobilization. Where, for example, a bank could raise $100 million for green transportation and work with five NBFIs who have sustainability integrated in them to drive the business. So one of the problems that we see is that the MSME economy in Sri Lanka, as accounts for about 62% of GDP. So if you want to convert the MSME transport sector to a greener solution, such as the three-wheelers and the little trucks and vans, you really need to have good funding because there is also the anxiety of electric vehicles, which is still very much it's new. So there is naturally some apprehension, but we know that given the right push, you can get over that, and it will be the mode of transport for the future. But to make that happen sooner than later, one would need attractive financing, and financing is available. And I think it's a question of working together to build a good ecosystem and then also get down that right type of financing. Like, for example, GCF funding could apply for a country project through one of the accredited banks, and they could work with multiple NBFIs to on lend to the MSME sector. So like three-wheelers and all of that. So that's I think the way forward. Given that the MSME sector relies very heavily on leasing and financing, we really need to focus on that if you need that sector to become green. In the case of the higher range models, the upmarket models of EVs, I don't think financing plays a very big role because many of them can afford to buy the vehicles outright. And if you have a good charging network and you have a very good range and the product and the service is good, I'm sure the takeoff will happen. But in the case of the MSME sector, which is, I think, the larger part of the country, at 62% of linkage to GDP, one needs to work on ecosystems, and battery life is very critical. Hidden costs need to be. We need to be very transparent with the costs of ownership, and a good ecosystem, I think, is needed.
Thanks a lot. Mr. Subasinghe, just to kind of, again, to talk about the levels of capex and so on that would be necessary in terms of A, the charging network, and B, the showrooms and the service centers. You were saying a second service center is expected. If you can what can you tell us in terms of what the level of capex required is, and what the capex might be going forward, and also what it is in terms of financing, in terms of equity versus debt?
So just before answering that question, I mean, I think why EV transformation is good for the country is it's not only the environmental factor. One today we import about 4.5 billion of our forex is spent on importation of fuel, and out of which about 20% is being consumed by ICE vehicles. ICE means the petrol and diesel vehicles, the passenger vehicles. So conversion more into EV will enable us to manage that outflow as well. So that's something that we also should keep in mind, that so with this, all stakeholders, we, as I mentioned before, the consumer is going to be benefiting simply because of the reduction in his operating cost. Environment for sure, there's a benefit as well as a government in terms of the outflow of continuous outflow of forex, or the reduction in that respect as well on fear. So going back to your question about the investment part of it, when we do a ROI for a fast charger, for example, to get a decent return on that fast charger, 2 hours of charging per day will give you the return. So you could see that it is not a situation where you need to have a significant usage of the fast charger to get a return. So 2 hours, and with the vehicle population also going up, you're talking about not more than 4 to 5 vehicles coming and charging is good enough. So that gives you a context of that investment as well. Then in terms of showrooms also is not that big. There are enough showrooms that have been built in the country or across the island as well. So showrooms are available. So it's a matter of getting it on lease, sprucing it up, and getting it going. The investment is significant is in the after sales part of it, and that is where we have made most of our investment in, simply because we do not want to let down a consumer who has bought the vehicle. And one thing that if you look at historically, some of the better brands in the country did not really hit their potential because of the after sales, not in line with their expectation, either spare parts not being available or not having trained supplier, or having to wait for a significant time period before he or she is able to get the vehicle repaired or serviced, had been one of the issues. So the bigger investments are mostly would be in the back area in terms of the after sales services, where the investment has to be much more, and that is where we have also invested.
And in terms of, I mean, the company John Keells CG Auto, how much, as in, what is the split between the two partners?
It's a 50-50 joint venture between CG Group and John Keells.
Right. And in terms of the funding mix, is it more skewed towards debt or equity? Is it?
It's actually the equity is very, very small, simply because your most of your spend or your funding will be in the importation part, which is the working capital. So funding the LCs and getting that working capital cycle, keeping an eye on that and liquidating your stock as soon as possible to meet your commitments on your in your import bills is where the eye should be. So there is no necessity to have a significant equity having to be infused in this business.
Right. So from that perspective, is it? Did you find it interesting that concessional sources of finance for this venture was? Did you that you found it hard to get, or how did you find it?
Not really. Not really. It wasn't a problem at all.
Right, as in terms of, as in the funding came from a
source
source that was dedicated for green energy, or not, or was it not the case?
No, it was not the case. But I think I agree with Mr. De Silva on the leasing part of it. I think that is where, if you look at it this way, I think before our economic crisis, before and now, a vehicle is going to be costing so much more for a consumer. And I guess, as Mr. Disla said, the upper end of the vehicles, there will be your own funding available. But how do you support the low end, the middle class, is where the important thing. And that is where I believe, Mr. Disla, the funding in terms of either in terms of green funding or whatever, so that finally that individual could purchase a vehicle at a reasonable funding and an innovative ways. Now, also things like operating leases would also be something very attractive in terms of managing your cost, as well as various tax advantages to all that as well. So I would think if the funding can be more skewed towards the final consumer, the customer, with various concession happening, that would also help the growth in the penetration of the EV vehicle usage in the country.
Right. In terms of sort of bigger corporate customers for BYD, have you seen interest in terms of people trying to convert the company fleets into EV vehicles, in terms of like even say the hotel industry or sort of the transportation sector in terms of say some of the taxi companies or ride-hailing services? Have you seen interest on that front?
Right. And also interestingly, with this another area that why certain companies that we have been able to start having the conversation have been with certain exporters who are also governed by certain ESG strategy framework, reducing of their carbon as footprint to all that. They are also looking towards EV with that intention as well, where their entire supply chain, making it and that is also one aspect, a set of that is one reason certain corporates are looking at it, and we are also able to provide them the necessary reports to whatever that is needed in that respect. And we are also working on making our ways of working also carbon neutral in that respect as well. On the other side, there are also the other corporates who have seen the benefit, where their operating cost, as I mentioned before, will be as much as 80% cheaper than a petrol or diesel vehicle, and moving into an EV fleet would also help them in that context as well. So there are different objectives now in this respect, where certain corporates are looking at refleeting with EV vehicles.
Thanks, Mr. Subasinghe. Mr. Yadav, if you could just give us a description of the journey that you've had with Sling in terms of increasing sort of the network density of the EV charging network, the ways you kind of pivoted, I think, over the last couple of years in terms of going to a lower cost kiosk design. And generally, like if you can give us like a description of your technology stack and so on.
Okay, sure. So in the two main goals which Sling Mobility has in its mobility vertical. One is affordability and reducing rider downtime. So I think these are two things which most of the users of Sling Mobility appreciate. That post-crisis, after the currency depreciated, I think price of any product available at least went up by 100%. So how do we provide the effective, cheaper solution to the consumer out there? So a battery subscription and a swapping model work pretty well for most of the consumers, because battery is anyways 40% cost of the two and three wheelers. So people are pretty happy buying a vehicle which is almost at the same price they would buy a vehicle previously. Second, in a battery swapping and subscription business, I think demand is always there. But if you don't have reasonable battery swapping stations or a network in a in an area where your sale density is, then I think you are actually failing the model. So for the moment, what we are concentrating is Colombo in Western Province, so that we create a high density of battery swapping stations around. So currently we have 15, and by the end of this year we might get to 100. I think we also need to be pretty cognizant of the fact that it's an infrastructure heavy business. Like we invest into a battery, and the battery remains on a system for at least 4 years time, and then we recover the cost of the battery in maybe two and a half years. So how do we keep on financing that? Financing is one part of it, but I think the cost is a bigger thing. Like in the height of the crisis, we could not import any battery swapping station from anywhere, so we built our battery swapping station right here, ground up in Sri Lanka with local collaborators. And then we realized that our cost of battery swapping station was pretty high. And if we kept on investing in those high cost battery swapping station, then we could not invest into more pressing requirements. So we came up with this idea of creating a frugal battery swapping network, which reduced the cost of battery swapping stations by almost 80%, so that we can actually go very quickly out. But again, while density is a very important thing, not a lot of people don't talk about it. Thank you for speaking about this. While we might put 100 battery swapping racks or stations in Colombo, but the demand for risen by range anxiety is pretty high. So we are coming up with a new model wherein we can actually reduce the sizes of a battery swapping station and create multiple battery swapping station in a very small area, so that there is a charge battery available for anybody. So I think to your question, I think we don't want to expand island wide yet in our battery swapping and subscription network. We want to create an extreme density in Colombo and Western Province first, and then go to other areas like Kandy, Gaul, Jaffna elsewhere. But I think from our expansion plan, this year we will focus on Colombo and Western Province to create heavy density, and then get to wider markets like Southern Province and Central and the Northern provinces by middle of next year.
Thanks. And by the way, our audience, if you could just send in your questions as and when we can find the time to translate them in. Mr. Yadav, you could also explain to us the logistics platform that you have built in terms of tracking the carbon usage per mile or per kilometer that is being used, and what that platform looks like.
So this the platform is extremely smart. So for the first time in Sri Lanka, we are the company which is using a technology called MFF2 SIM cards, which have been widely used globally, which actually gets embedded in the battery and can emit up to 32 data points on a real time basis, which also includes the carbon avoidance data. So 1 kilometer run on a battery approximately avoids close to around 230 grams of carbon. And then this actually becomes like a pretty interesting play for us to look at how alternative fundings could be arranged through carbon credit financing globally. So regarding the logistic platform, we saw the need that with the increasing e-commerce market in Sri Lanka, we wanted to create a new model out, which was completely based on EVs for last mile logistics. This model is pretty successful in India, Bangladesh, UAE, and elsewhere. But the fleet management model on retail last mile logistic does not exist in Sri Lanka yet. It's a quite a distributed market. So we created a new system altogether, wherein we use only EVs. We use predictive diagnostics around how a logistic model could be smarter as we go along. And as we see new e-commerce players coming in, this will become something of a flagship for us as a subsidiary of Sling Mobility. Sling Mobility, wherein we provide a very predictable, sophisticated fleet management operation, which doesn't exist at the last mile logistic level in Sri Lanka.
Is the data that is collected, which will be anonymized, of course, is that something that can be sort of monetized or used as an asset?
No, we don't want to do that because of data protection requirement as such. But for the fleet, we collect for the fleet of vehicles which we own, we collect a lot of data. But it is purely for system improvement and making the system more efficient. Like for example, we are working on a pilot project wherein we are getting quantum technology and artificial intelligence for route optimization for the riders, which will make the system very efficient. So that is all data driven. But in a retail facing business wherein people buy the vehicle and take a battery and subscription, we don't track, we don't collect data. It is just anything to do with battery swapping and subscription of the consumer.
Right. And in terms of the other verticals that come under Lion Ventures, could you give us a description of those ventures as well, and what the state of play is in those businesses?
So, apart from Sling Mobility, we have a company called Live Community, which is actually digitizing gated community living in Sri Lanka. So, it's a prop tech play, and essentially, the vision of the company is to be a prop tech to a digital bank play, which currently we are building the technology slowly and steadily. But the idea would be to actually roll out very actively across all the condominiums in Sri Lanka in a very small period of time. Then the company which you spoke about, Logistic, that's the other company called Here Logistic, which is the EV-based last mile logistic company. Then we've also invested into a destination AC charger company, which wherein I was telling earlier on that within the next 12 months' time we would deploy more than 100 chargers across the island. So IPO of the charging business is based in the company called BoostNet, and we are also a small investor into a small gender neutral fund in Sri Lanka called Her Capital. So that's the slate of our investments right now. We are not looking forward to raise a new fund immediately. The idea would be to actually scale up these companies in 2025 and middle of 26, and then looking at raising a new fund.
Right. This is a question that I was going to get round to, but our audience has also asked it in different ways, and something that actually all three of you gentlemen might be able to contribute to. Uh, in terms of the second-hand market for vehicles, for ICE vehicles in Sri Lanka has been a huge thing over the years from ever since I can remember, and certainly the last 5 years, especially with the depreciation and the freeze on vehicle imports, has increased the value of second-hand market completely. And one of the other, apart, I think, rage anxiety, I think the other main issue with EVs is what that second-hand market is going to be like. What is your view on this, Mr. Subasinghe, Mr. De Silva, Mr. Yadav, even from your perspective in terms of the resale value of batteries and what the recycling market is for batteries even? Perhaps starting with Mr. Subasinghe, since you're the vehicle seller here.
Yeah. So when you look at the battery that BYD has, if I'm to talk about BYD, it's something called technologically, it's called a blade battery, and it is quite in terms of technology, it is significantly higher. If I'm to talk about briefly about BYD, their origins have been in the battery technology, and subsequently only they moved into why not produce our own vehicles type of situation. So they continuously invest in improving the technology as we go on. So there's a guarantee for 160,000 kilometers or 8 years, whichever is higher or whichever comes first. But it doesn't mean that after 8 years it will die off. The total life period for a vehicle, a battery that I mentioned, they consider it to be 4,000 cycles. When I say 4,000 cycle is one charging cycles. One charging cycle is equivalent to 400 kilometers. So 4,000 into 4,000 into 400, you're talking about 1.6 million. So literally, so even if you did take, let's say, 50% of it to be the actual situation, so you're talking about a life period for that battery. So unfortunately, today, most of the EV vehicles the world over possibly have not run, let's say, 20 years. So, but if you do, but the basis of this calculation is based on their technology as well as in that respect, that is how it is worked. Now, in terms of, let's say, for argument's sake, the battery dies or it drops to a efficiency level that is not adequate to operate as a vehicle. There are also recyclers of this battery. So there are certified recyclers world over where we have signed up with them for them to where they repurpose. So we sell it to them and they repurpose. And repurposing would become where you're not going to throw it away, but it will be for energy storage or some different purpose as well. So that is how that entire life cycle goes through in this battery technology part. I'm sure Mr. Yadav will be able to add on to what I said and on that aspect, Mr. Yadav.
No, sure. So I think, Mr. Subasinghe, what different vehicle types have a different battery technology and different requirements. Like the BYD battery with 400 kilometers has 4,000 cycles. For our batteries, which is for 2 and 3 wheelers, since the battery density is so small, you can't produce a large battery in a swappable environment. So the battery cycle would be somewhere around 1,500 cycles. So the battery needs to be possibly replaced within 4 years' time. But in a battery swapping system, we say you got a lifetime warranty, because the fact is that you don't own the battery and you can always swap the battery at any point in time. So it is a business cost which we need to keep on reinvesting into the battery as such. A battery for us pays off in, say, close to around 13 to 14 months time, and a life cycle of the battery is close to around 4 years. So I think from our perspective, the business pays its back within a small period of time, so that we are ready to replace that battery within 4 years time. We already have our agreements with battery recyclers internationally, so that we can recycle those batteries. And as a rule of thumb, you can recover up to around 20% of the original cost of the battery with multiple components inside, and then which could be reinvested back in the business for the batteries. So as you rightly said, Mr. Subasinghe, this 20-year life cycle of the commercialization of the EV industry, we've yet not seen what actually is the end of life of the EV vehicles. But considering what you just mentioned, 1.6 million kilometers of a battery kilometerage is a big number. So I think if you were to look at on the ICE vehicle side as well, majority of countries have come up with this regulation that you cannot use any vehicle beyond 10 years of its lifetime. Okay, so I think Sri Lanka will at some point in time will catch up to those requirements as well. I don't know what that would be, but the fair life cycle of a vehicle is it could be up to 10 years from regulation in multiple countries. But from a battery perspective, usually if it used carefully, nothing goes wrong with these batteries, and they last the overall life cycle.
Mr. De Silva, is there anything
Yeah.
you'd like to add to that in terms
Yeah,
of?
I think, from we're looking currently at, operating leases for these vehicles, and we're looking at about 40 to 50% of a residual value at the end of 5 years for the vehicle. So those are like the guesstimates that we are working on, given that adoption is at a very early stage in Sri Lanka. And I think the batteries are also expected to be, I think realistically, I would say at the end of about 5 years, you're looking at about an 80%. That's the kind of calculation that we are working on for financing. So this will, I think, largely depend on manufacturer-backed warranties, which is actually where the auto industry has moved to, both non-IC, ICE, and also electric. So if the battery, the security of the batteries, ability to perform is ensured, then I think the anxieties that are there with regard to even second-hand disposal values of the vehicle will not be so high. I think it will depend on how the battery and the car will be at what level of performance at the end of say 5 years. It would be interesting to also see how the same type of car has fared in other markets where they've already been around for a couple of years. So I think that would probably be a place where you can base your decision and your numbers on. I've seen a lot of these cars in Nepal. I think particularly the BYD. It's been very popular in Nepal. I think given that the Chowdhury Group is in Nepal, and I think that would be probably a good benchmark to compare, given that their road conditions are also similar to ours, or not exactly very much on the freeway use, but more city use on smaller roads. So I'm sure BYD probably also has a lot of information and learning from BYD in Nepal.
I mean, I'd like to take the question Sujiva has posed here. To grow EV population share, the price needs to be competitive with ICE. Cheapest BYD is 11 million plus, but equal ICE cars are cheaper, say 9 million plus, is one question. Then the second question is, why not JKH push the government for competitive EV tariffs by not highlighting and that question. So firstly, Sujiva, the models, there will be a model that will be coming towards the end of the year called the Seagull. Seagull, what has happened is that it's still a left-hand driven vehicle in most of it, but it's been converted into the right hand, and we hope to have it towards the end of the year by October or so, and that will be quite competitive price. It will be definitely under 10 million. So we are trying to bring it as low as possible, simply to compete with the vehicle models that you have mentioned in this note. About the tariff part on EV, yes, we had a conversation with the government showing the benefit of the EV conversion into the government coffer, the revenue aspect, as well as I mentioned before, the fact that fuel is the biggest effect burner, literally burning effect in the country, for 4.5 billion is what we spend on effects to import fuel, and out of which 20 to 25% is being used by passenger vehicles. But of course we were informed, as well as we in this conversation, the one biggest challenge at the time for the country today, for the government today, is the revenue generation. And in that context, their priority was slightly beyond having a EV driven type of a import removal. So, but I believe that over the next few years, there is a potential of tariffs coming off, especially in the EV categories, but it is yet to be seen.
Thanks a lot, sir. And also sort of just to ask in terms of, is there a possibility, or you were saying, I mean, I think BYD also has these arrangements in other countries where it's possible that they might make an offer to buy back the battery?
Well, it's like this. So it is the guarantee as well as the performance level situation that is there, Naveen, that we are guaranteeing during that period. If there is a performance drop of X percentage lesser than during that period, there is that replacement of the battery that would come into play. But thereafter, it's a situation where we have signed up with the battery recyclers, the repurposing team, so that what we have promised or sign up to is that it will not have to go into landfill or anything of that nature. But subsequently, if a person needs to replace or discard that vehicle, that we have a process in place to buy back and send it across.
I mean, conceptually, if you have the ability to replace a battery, then really, with the software upgrades and and so on, there's no reason why an electric vehicle can't run for a considerable period of time,
Yes,
if I'm
yes.
not mistaken.
I mean, exactly the situation. And I mean, according to the calculation, you can do 4,000 cycles, which is 1.6 million. So it's a lifetime usage. But yeah,
And also my understanding is, unlike ICE vehicles, I mean spare parts, repairs and so on are a lot easier for electric vehicles
yes.
because the wear and
I
tear
mean,
is
I
a lot
mean, I
less.
mean, there is nothing called in terms of I mentioned as I mentioned, 88% energy saving comes in, but in terms of operational cost, the wastage of components, the number of components in that is very small. The relatively smaller than ICE in the engines. So your wasting of that is also as the saving is also about 80%,
Yeah, I
as
mean
well as
they
even.
literally don't even have things like brake pads, right? Or like a transmission
And
mechanism.
also, Naveen, even things like there's nothing called a service cost where you are going to change the oil to whatever. So
Yeah.
you all that are big savings for any using any person using a vehicle.
Mr. Yadav, just to kind of ask you in terms of the battery market per se, given like your local market constraints, what is the most realistic end of life pathway for your batteries? And is there additional investment or capex that you need to scale up the second life or recycling options locally?
No, I think we would stay away from recycling because our focus is on the energy as a service for across mobility and the storage side. But as I said earlier on, that we have international recyclers we've tied up with, so the batteries goes to the end of life there. But to add on to the conversation around the life of the battery as such, while we're talking about lithium-ion batteries at this stage in time, but there's a massive R&D which is going around on various different kinds of batteries which might come into play as you go along in next few years' time. That may actually change the landscape of how we look at the longevity of the EV batteries. Things like sodium ion is being researched very heavily in UK and India right now, and then larger vehicles with the four wheelers could come up with those sort of batteries, which is a much more cooler technology, and then the cycles are much higher over there. So recycling from our perspective, we know that there's a massive amount of investment which is going in recycling of these black mass, as they say in Southeast Asia and in India. That's a separate investment bucket which we don't want to get in right now. I think the idea would be end of life of the batteries will be exported out to our battery recyclers, potentially one in Singapore who have their establishment in Thailand and Saudi Arabia, and they get an end of life residual value of the battery, and then reinvest in either the same technology or any new technology at that point in time. So from our perspective, while we are heavily invested into operating technology of our business, but we are not married to one given technology of the battery. Whichever is the most efficient technology at that point in time, while we're replenishing our battery infrastructure, we'll go with that.
Thanks a lot. And again, I think for Mr. Subasinghe as well as Mr. De Silva, another question from the audience was that given the factors discussed, are there any implications of insurance costs? Especially, I think, with the perspective of the risks associated with lithium battery fires, and so on.
If I have to take that before Mr. Dixon talks about it, I think there was a conversation, a fear amongst the insurers that look here, there was a perception that there will be they had three aspects. One thing was the battery, how safe was the battery. Secondly, the is the EV vehicle more prone for accidents than a ICE vehicle? Then the third one was the cost of spare parts to be much more. So therefore, whether they should be charging a higher premium. But during the last 6 to 7 months, we we had different workshops with the insurance partners, showing them why it should not be so. The blade battery that I'm talking about, there is called a nail penetration test, which shows that it doesn't burst as people thought it would. And we showed them, and we had data to show why it should not, why it is safe. In addition to the spare parts to the conversation, and showed them that the replacement requirement was significantly lesser than a petrol or diesel vehicle. And with that understanding, the insurers did not want to have a different premium on the insurance. So it was also a case, Naveen, in a new industry where you need to have that open dialogue, understanding, educating, that needs to happen. And that will have to continue as well for in any industry where you want to have better penetration into that for the industry to really grow. The continuous educating also needs to happen. So that's how we manage the insurance concerns, as well as giving them the confidence on the product.
So Naveen, can I add to our own case over here? Since we
Sure.
are into battery subscription and battery swapping model, so the owner of the vehicle does not own the battery. So insurance companies actually like this model. It was something similar to previous ICE vehicles, where when you bought the vehicle, you did not buy the fuel for 5 years. So they never insured the fuel. So in our system, they're insuring the vehicles like ICE vehicles without the battery. But the insurance companies are taking a separate look at our battery pool and insuring them separately, assuming even though as Mr. Subasinghe said that penetration testing and all we've done, assuming some incident were to happen, okay, then how would that insurance risk be covered? So I think that risk is separately covered as the battery owner, which we are, and how the compensation may be paid out in case that were to happen. Any vehicle, even ICE vehicles, can catch fire because of faulty sparks or anything like that. So it's about insurance companies how they look at it. In our sense, I think the vehicle without the battery is treated exactly the same as the vehicles without the fuel. So that's a call which insurance companies has taken on us.
Yeah, I think it's encouraging that the insurers locally are looking at it in a positive way. Globally, I think the situation has been a little different, with electric car insurance being more costly than ICE, due to a whole host of other factors like lack of adequate repairers, and in a big country, these could become problems. And if you total the car, the component costs are much higher. And if you wreck the battery, for example, or it has to be replaced, it's a significantly high cost. But I think in Sri Lanka, the kind of accidents that happen, there are not too many freeways and expressways, would be at lower speeds, and hopefully, I mean, you're looking at more body damage, than shell damage, than really, the more expensive components like the battery getting totaled. So it's encouraging to note that insurers have taken a positive view, because in the case of the global industry, I think initial the situation was that electric car insurance was a little higher than the gasoline.
Thank, Thanks a lot, Mr. De Silva. I mean, looking at the competitive sort of landscape for lending to sort of green energy and EVs in general, do you see like a lot of competition from banks and/or finance companies at the moment? And is that due to maybe a lack of funding, or is it something that you see that is picking up?
I think it's picking up, and very soon all of the financiers, the banks and NBFIs will have it as a staple, financing product. I think the uncertainties that are there revolve around the residual values of the vehicles at the end of 5 years, given that it's relatively new. All the brands are quite new, and the concept is new in Sri Lanka. And the previous examples of the electric cars that have come in have been of a different generation and an inferior quality level. So I think the confidence will be built. My take is that the confidence will definitely be built, and institutions such as ours, which are triple bottom line, financiers, will really move forward aggressively on enabling electric mobility in Sri Lanka across all different market segments. At the moment, Alliance, for the last maybe 7-8 years, we, as a pledge to for financing ICE vehicles, we plant and allocate 50 trees for every auto lease that we do. So with electric mobility, we won't have to do that, I think, because we are not contributing to polluting the environment, and but we'll still continue, I guess, in planting trees for biodiversity, but not so much to offset the carbon footprint that we are helping our customers create. So, we have at the moment planted 850,000 trees for the IC vehicles that we have financed. So hopefully that cost will also accrue to the customers in lower rentals with the EV financing.
Okay, thank you so much, gentlemen. We've kind of gone a little bit over time as well. Thanks a lot for lending us your expertise in what is a new and exciting sector for Sri Lanka, and hopefully within the next 6 months or 1 year, we will see a huge progress in this market, and we will maybe be able to revisit this conversation with better data points. Mr. Subasinghe, Mr. Yadav, and Mr. Silva, thanks a lot. And thank you to our audience for joining this Friday afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very
you.
much for having me.